iLEAD presents to you Future Vista, the new age careers. When it comes to the media sector, the digital disruption has been taking over almost all aspects of our modern life. Media has not been any different. Lots of media houses have embraced the digital and has made it even playing field for startups to go digital. In such an age, we can't disregard the traditional media outlets like newspapers, radio, television, public relations, advertising, cinema, and so on. So, is traditional media still the best bet? Introspecting it as a profession. We are positive our esteemed panel, consisting of pioneers and trailblazers from the media industry, would help you to find your passion, attain success through the right facts, guidance, and suggestions.
The first thing is that, of course, I've been madly in love with the print media. And you can understand why, and that is why I'm here today, and that's why you've asked me here also today. Because traditional media, particularly print, I think still thrives. It still dominates. And it is really our sheet anchor. Everything else happens after that. Everything flies off into the social media space and into digital media and everything else. But we've got to hang on to the whole idea of traditional media. When Anish was talking about traditional, I was just thinking that traditional actually means everything that helps you to form an opinion, something that widens your knowledge of the world, and something that gives you a very, very solid base that stays with you for a long time. So that's, to me, what traditional media means. Basically, and this is what I found, I was talking to Pragya, and I was so delighted to find that from when they were children, they would be reading newspapers and books and underlining them and highlighting them, and they still continue to read, because read is what all of you have to do if you have to come to grips with a knowledge base that you must make for yourselves, because that's what tradition is all about. You've got to, when you're making a building, it's got to have a solid foundation. And that solid foundation means that you've got to know your facts, your figures, what's going on in the world around you. And that's what it is. So I feel that it's the books we have read, all of us have read. It's the poems that we have all memorized over the years, which I'm sure all of you can spout. It's the newspapers and magazines that many of us have collected. I know I myself have collected very special issues of Life magazine. Have you got any in your collection, Shraman? Life, Time, India Today, and even a whole lot of Pujo Shankars. All of these are collectibles. All of these are things that make us read and make us go into a different world. Some of it is a world of fantasy. A lot of it is a world of fact. In today's world, unfortunately, with all the new newspapers coming up, you get a byline very easily. We had to fight for it. When it finally came, it was very, very sweet, and something that you felt you had earned, because otherwise you were just a correspondent, just a reporter by a reporter. But the moment you saw your name in print, that meant that you had graduated. That meant that you had earned something for yourself. You have known India Today, you have known NDTV, you've known CNN, TV 18. Right now, you've decided to go in a startup. Now it's a very difficult and a dangerous area to get into. And it is an area where there are a lot of challenges and there's a lot of competition, Prema. So what is it that you want to bring to the table when you get into a startup like this? I think this is also exciting. We need to know that, because that's also going to be traditional. It's going to be a traditional media space, but yet it is going to do something more. So tell us.
I think when it comes to news, news is something that can never go out of our lives because it is informing us of what is around us in our regions, nationally, globally. And in fact, today I was reading about Al Jazeera, BBC, and CNN, and why people still go back to those channels when we have alternative forms of media. And it is because maybe people already have some cultural or social related information. Maybe they've grown up culturally in a certain way. They have certain ideologies, even politically, and maybe they want to know more about that or affirm those views that they have, and which is why they look to these traditional media. But when you have the alternative media, it also gives that space for different points of view to be put forward. Now, when we talk about news and say we talk about Europe, there are many countries in Europe where because of the governments and authoritarian governments, there is an embargo on what information can be put out by traditional media. Say like Austria, Hungary, and in fact in 2017 and 18, there were journalists who were killed and they worked with alternative media. And one was killed in Malta, I think 2017, and in 2018 in Slovakia, sorry. So it is about the space which you're looking at alternative media to put out the information which the public wants to know. And in these kind of countries, of course, for traditional media, there are certain rules that they have to follow. So, which is why we're seeing now alternative media also coming into India. Today, when I am with a startup, I'm looking at something new, something different. I've worked with traditional media, various news channels, and of course, that joy will never go where we are on the field, going, collecting information. And I think Rita ma'am was there at a time when there were no mobile phones and they had to go and wait for hours on end to get that information. Times have changed, things have changed, but though I never worked in print media, I've worked for the web and for various channels, but print always gave you that foundation for being a good journalist, and that is what it was known as before. Today we have different forms of media, and here I am looking at an exciting space, a startup, where it's going to be about news, it's going to be about information, because the audience does want content, and that space for content is always growing. There's the youth wants to know the news, but in a different way. As Rita ma'am said, nobody really wants to read newspapers all the time. Maybe some people still like that, but of course there's social media and alternative forms of media.
Thank you, Prema. You said news. One more thing I think is views. I think we also like to get a lot of your views on, when you're starting your new venture. And that is where probably you would be a little different from the others, do you think?
So I'm part of the startup. So one of the core members, when I'm looking forward to putting forward something exciting, because my experience as a journalist in various channels has given me that opportunity now to put forward news or content in a different way. So for that, I have to read a lot, and I think, like you said, knowledge is something that empowers you. Reading never goes out of fashion, and knowing your craft and your skill, that's how you excel at it.
Of course, and your viewpoint, that's what they want.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
I think viewpoint is why they really want to
Yes.
take you, and that's what they pay you for.
Exactly. In fact, Suman, you one side it's photography that has been your passion, and what has been interesting is that you're also teaching that to media science students across the board. What is it that you find that your message should be to students for how successful they can be as photojournalists? Because that's an area where which you can take really seriously, and there's a lot of work to be done. It's not just a picture saying 1,000 words. It's much more than that. Again, it's research. Again, it is insight. A lot of things that go into it.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. So, first of all, do you like photography at all? How many of you? At least selfies, definitely, right? just by clicking selfies and uploading, in your social media platform. Yeah. So the term photography, there are different genres that are available, and one of the very important genre, which has been correctly said by ma'am, that is the photojournalism. I don't know whether you have gone through the works of some international and national masters of photography like Henry Cartier-Bresson or Raghu Rai, even Steve McCurry, the living legend. I don't know, even you can follow Steve McCurry in Instagram right now. Yeah. So the thing is, photojournalism is a very old profession. Definitely you have heard a lot of names on that. You have observed a lot of works on that. The photograph speaks 1,000 words. That's a very famous term in photography. Usually we use this one. Apart from that, so first of all, the challenge of photojournalism is you have to tell a story, right? There's a very distinct difference in between a snapshot and a photograph, right? Snapshot means it is not only just a random clicking. Snapshot means any kind of a image which is not having any message, any story, okay? But a photograph must have a story, must have a message in that. And it's a very difficult job, very, very difficult job. It is not just randomly clicking. Clicking the shutter button is not a photography actually. First of all, you have to visualize, okay? You have to visualize, and then you have to click. Henry Cartier-Bresson once said, that is, you need 3 things if you want to capture a photograph. One is your brain, second one is your eye, and the third one is your heart. The gadget is not important at all. Okay, the eyes are important, your brains are important, and the heart is important as well, right? So the most important thing is, if you open up a newspaper, I know many of you don't go through newspapers, right? Rightly said by ma'am. I'm also facing the same kind of an experience daily. But if you open it up, it could be your online, it could be your offline, a hard copy or whatever. One image, usually what we do, always we notice the image first, then we go to the text. And sometimes we notice only the image and we don't go to the text as well because we have got the entire story from the image. That's the challenge. That's the challenge. There are very, definite barrier in between 2 kinds of photography. One is a purely commercial. Commercial means I'm talking about the advertising, fashion, and event and wedding. That's a completely different genre. And another one is a completely different one. That is your press photography or photojournalism as well. That is obviously very, very challenging one. And there is no need to look for a full-time job in photojournalism. You can start your career as a freelancer. Okay. If you work as a freelancer, you'll be getting the bylines, and that is very important. In an early stage, it could be you could be a photojournalist, you could be a advertising photographer, whatever. Getting the byline in a newspaper or in a magazine, it is a very important one. That will be very useful for your portfolio. So definitely you can do, especially if you love candid photography. I believe you know what is a candid one, right? So if you love candid photography, that is especially on street, okay? So definitely you can look for this career. That is a wonderful career option is there. But always my sincere advice is you go for as a freelancer, build up your own portfolio, then you can look for something which is commonly known as a full-time job. You can go for that, you may not go for that as well. As a freelancer, a host of wonderful press photographers, they have been working just as a freelancer. So the most important thing is you have to love the job. Apart from the technical part and all this thing, you have to love the job and you have to, the dedication is very important. And at the end, I will just say just one single statement of Steve McCurry. I'm not advising you all to follow that statement. Steve McCurry said, if you want to become a photographer, leave home first. But I'm not encouraging you all to do all this thing. But first of all, you have to love that profession. You have to love your job. Then definitely you can become a very successful press photographer.
Suman, that was very, very succinctly put. And I think we've learned a lot from it. But one thing you mentioned about Henri Cartier-Bresson, you talked about how he focused on, he said, you need the head, the brain, the eyes, and the heart. There's one more thing I want to ask you, is when you're urging everyone to go into any kind of press photography or even fashion photography or generally journalistic photography, shouldn't they also get to know the nuts and bolts of the hardware that they're handling? Yes. I think technically they should really get into that.
Absolutely. You know, the photography is actually a combination of science and arts. So far as the science is concerned, that means definitely we have to have some knowledge on the application part. And when the application part comes into the picture, that means you have to have a very good knowledge on your gadget. But nowadays, ma'am, just by using your mobile phone, you can capture a lot of wonderful images. Just by using a mobile phone, right? So, but definitely you have to have some basic technical knowledges, something on the exposure control, the light control, the focusing system. These are very basic things that definitely we have to have a very good knowledge on that. So gadget or the hardware part is important, definitely. But especially, ma'am, or the audience, the gadget is very much important if you want to go into your career as a successful advertising photographer, then definitely gadget becomes, or the hardware becomes very, very important. But otherwise, even for as a press photographer or as a photojournalist, you can simply use your mobile, no issue at all. Because there, the art part or the composition part is very important rather than the technical aspects.
In fact, what has happened is there's been a lot of citizen journalists, and they have uploaded some extraordinary pictures.
Absolutely.
And those have gone viral. So that is also an indication and an inspiration to people to try and get into photography and, have an eye for the moment.
Right, yeah.
When you face it. I'd like to come to Gaurav, and I'm sure all of you are waiting to hear from him. You've seen him a lot. You've seen him on the big screen and the small screen and OTT platforms. He's very, very popular. What I'd like to know from him, since we've got him captive right here, Gaurav, is the whole idea of connectivity. See, for instance, some of the older actors, apart from being film stars and film personalities, they also went into Jatra, for instance, where they felt, oh, you feel the pulse of the audience and you feel them. But you're not the kind who would probably go into that. What is it that drives you to continue to want to act and get into various characters?
I think I'm in a weird profession. Whatever platform you work on, doesn't matter if you're doing cinema, if you're doing television, if you were doing work on radio, or you're working in the OTT platforms. It's at the end of the day, you're telling stories, and that's something that really drives me. And which is why I don't know if I'll continue being an actor for the rest of my life, because telling stories is something that I really enjoy, and probably would like to go into the business of making films and start directing films, hopefully someday. But then that is what drives me, telling stories and creating new characters and taking it to the audiences. When it comes to my field of work, my field of expertise, when you talk about traditional media and new media, the first thing that comes to mind is cinema versus OTT. That's a huge point of, it's sort of a discussion that's been going on for a while now, especially since the pandemic, because pandemic changed everything. And we couldn't get out of our houses for a while, and we started consuming content on our mobile phones. And there has come such a time right now when people are talking about the fact that if you can watch the content on your phone or at home, then why go to the theaters at all? There I have a little bit of discussion that I would like to have regarding that, which is that cinema essentially is a medium that was made to be, how do I put it? Firstly, it's an experience. Secondly, it is supposed to be a sort of a shared experience.
A mass consumed.
Yes. And the thing is, it is not something that you enjoy as in isolation. And also, since the pandemic happened, I'm sure all of us are tired of being in isolation, and it just feels great to be just going out, meeting people. And cinema was always supposed to be a shared experience. I can guarantee you, of all of you sitting here, how many of you will say that in the year 2022, there must be some movie that you've watched on your phone or at home on your TV? Have you ever felt this, that boy, am I glad to be watching this alone? You cannot say that. I'm sure you'd feel, when you watch it, you'll feel, I wish this particular friend of mine was with me. I could have shared this experience with him or her. So that is the magic of cinema, and that is the basic need for human beings to socialize, I think. So which is why I think cinema will always be the best bet between cinema and OTT. And also I'm a student of mass media and of cinema, and I have been to film institutes and studied there, and I am sort of a traditionalist. And I have a problem with consuming content on this device. This was not made for that purpose. You can't watch Star Wars on this and listen to John Williams' score in this tiny speaker and just enjoy the thing in its totality. You can't. So so I'm sort of a traditionalist, so cinema will always be the best bet for me.
So that's fantastic, and something we've got to know today. And now if I can somehow get Sonia Sarkar in my vision, I'm sure you can see Sonia Sarkar, but I am so excited about talking to you because Sonia Sarkar, you're in an entirely different space. You are in an independent space where you have been fearless and fearlessly independent, going to places which people have never been to. What I was most interested to ask you is that nobody else has been driving you. It is as if you have chosen the areas of conflict which you have covered. You have chosen now to get into the very, very sensitive areas of politics and religion, for instance. So, especially with the world having changed so much, and when there is so much conflict in people's ideas and minds and ideology, how are you coming to terms with it, Sonia?
I was just saying that the amount of trouble that I had connecting to the platform over the past half an hour, I was just thinking perhaps India is still not ready for anything digital. So traditional print media is the best bet here. But coming to your question, Ms. Bhimani, I would love to say that, all that I've covered all these years as a journalist, mostly, not when I was working as a young intern in a newspaper, but otherwise, it's mostly the stories that have interested me, that have kind of taken me to places. Even when I was working as an intern in Hindustan Times, I was so curious to know about the life of sex workers in Shonagachi. So I went and, did a lot of stories about their lives. So, starting even as a 21-year-old intern, it is stories that have mattered to me. Well, what I have been doing all these years as an independent journalist for the past 3.5 years precisely, it's again stories. What I feel is important, what I am convinced about. It is about telling the story that I am convinced about. I have to do it with a lot of compassion, with a lot of objectivity, no matter what the medium is. Even when I was writing for the print media, and even for the TV, I worked in TV for a year, and now digital platforms. It's the story, it's the basic principle of journalism, that is the ethics of journalism that has not changed. So it's that is very important, no matter which medium I'm working on. And as I said, that whatever is happening around, be it in India or in any other country, in South Asia or Southeast Asia, I've also reported from Iraq. It's the stories, it's the human lives that matter, that have actually inspired me to write about them. The art of storytelling actually is something to do with two things. Do you believe in the story? Are you convinced about it? And do you follow the journalistic ethics? No matter what medium is there, whether you are working in TV or print or digital, you will still tell the story. And no matter whether you are a staffer or with any organization or an independent journalist, it's the conviction to tell the story that matters.
I have seen this weird aversion towards change. Whenever change comes, there's a certain section of people who are strongly against it. Whenever Reel came, people on YouTube were very angry. Whenever computers came, people who wrote on typewriters were very angry because some people liked the sound of the typewriters. They thought it was tradition. So I think, why should we stick to tradition if we have something better? Why not go for progress over tradition? Because what I have seen is Hollywood diverged from cinema, from the Italian wave of cinema a long time ago. It went into a whole new direction. It gave cinema the perspective that it was a commercial medium, not something just to signify art or to tell your own feelings. It was more than that. So Hollywood took cinema to a level where people can make art films and be happy about themselves that I did something. This is for the society. But still, it's those commercial movies that are earning the big bucks. So my question is, why stick to traditions when we can progress beyond all measures and just make those traditions obsolete?
Wow, that is some question. You want to answer that? As someone who loves change, at least you should know the names of people who are on this panel. Especially since I'm the moderator.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And I've been around for a very long time. And I love the click-clack of a typewriter. I love it. I've grown up with it. But I changed and changed and changed and went to computers. And then when digital media came, into our lives, and they asked me to be part of a conference where it was totally on digital media, I sent them a one-line reply. I said, I'm sorry, I'm a dinosaur, so I will not come. They said, no, you have to come because, after all, traditional media, you must give a perspective on it. So not only did I give a perspective, but I got to learn a lot. And I went with the waves of change, as you say. So we ourselves are traditionalists, but we are changing and we are growing. But having said that, you've still got to have that foundation. Tradition means forming your opinions. Tradition means having a whole body of knowledge that you must garner. And then only can you fly into all the new media, right? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have liked the entire event very much because the entire session was very much interactive and there were very renowned panelists as well. So definitely it was a very good effort from the management as well.
It was really nice and engaging because I think the audience also had so many questions, which was nice because they were thinking and we didn't feel like only we were speaking. But I think what was really nice that everyone brought out different points from various aspects of media, whether it was public relations, cinema, journalism. So I think that is the perspective that the audiences and the students got, which was important.
There's a certain smell of an educational institution that I really miss, and it just feels great to be inside a college, and it feels great to be meeting so many people. And the last about 2 years of our lives has been spent in isolation, so it always feels great to have so many people to talk to and so many people to interact with.
I personally was very happy that we were going to be talking about traditional media because that's where we come from, that's where I come from. I still feel that people ought to respect tradition. Tradition does not mean something old. Tradition means something where you garner a lot of knowledge and you garner a lot of experience from the past and facts and figures, and you read books and then you have a nice base from which then you can speak and write and get onto electronic media, get onto the digital platform, and keep communicating in every way. So that's why it was very important for us to say traditional media still exists, and it is still something that grouts us, and it's there to stay always. But we must all keep growing.
This is a lovely opportunity to got to know many things and got to learn many things from these people, and so it has helped me out a lot with a lot of things.
Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Ankon Ghosh and I am from BMS 4B. The last 5 days was a lovely event by the iLEAD, and I am looking forward for more such sessions in future. Thank you.